Again, welcome to Exploring CarmenZoom, student-to-student interaction. My name is Tiffany. I'll be assisting in the facilitation, but Stephanie is our main facilitator today.
All right, so welcome to today's part 3 session. We have yet again a packed session with content, and I see some friendly folks out there. Hello, and people who've been to some of the other sessions, so we're going to run this exactly like that one. But if you were not able to attend any of the others, I will go ahead and talk a little bit about what we're going to do. So my name is Tiffiny Rohdieck, and I am the manager of professional learning here in Office of Distance Education and eLearning. Tiffany is going to be helping me out today. Tiffany, you want to tell us a little bit about your role in OD?
Absolutely. So again, my name is Tiffiny Plasencio-Howard, and I am a program specialist. I also work for our Office of Distance Education and eLearning. I work on our professional learning team, and I assist with workshops along with the Keep Teaching initiative. Happy to see you all. I see a lot of familiar faces here. And I'll be assisting with the chat, by the way. So if you have any questions throughout the session, please put all of your questions within the chat window. We ask that you keep yourselves muted, which you were muted upon joining this workshop. We ask that once you enter the breakout rooms later on, then you can take yourselves off mute so that you can communicate with each other. Again, go ahead and put those questions in the chat. Throughout the session, you will be asked to participate in the chat by either marking yes or no. Those options are in the chat window, so I'll just quickly tell you that if you aren't familiar with Zoom, you will see that in the bottom, if you don't see the chat on the right-hand side, you'll find that in the bottom of your window. So once you click chat, you'll see the list of participants, and you'll see the option for yes, no, if questions come up where you can mark those options. Also, I will be sharing the PowerPoint slides in a PDF format since it is a little bit smaller. This is kind of a large file. Thank you.
Okay, so let's get started with talking about the outcomes for this particular session. So we have the same outcomes for all 3 sessions. Today, we're specifically going to talk about helping students kind of engage with each other and interact with each other. So how do we do that? Using CarmenZoom in a way that contributes to a positive learning experience for students and also a positive experience for teaching for you. We will talk about specifically, you'll see the breakout rooms as the main way that we can help students interact with each other. We did talk in session 2 about chat, so they can interact with each other there. And we also talked in session 2 about using polling and using the reaction button. So there are other ways for them to at least see what each other thinks, and you as the instructor see how your students are feeling about the content. But today we're going to focus very specifically on breakout rooms to get them actually talking to each other in a way that is outside of and beyond the chat. So we are going to have a space after each section of today's session for questions. And then as always, at the very end, after we kind of say goodbye and give you some resources, we'll stick around for a few minutes if you have any kind of lingering questions that we hadn't answered up to that point. All right, so this first question is one that I have been asking here for a while. Actually, I will go ahead and do this poll for us, Tiffany, since I'm here. So what I'm curious about is finding out what your kind of role is. So are you here because you are interested in how to use this when you're teaching a course? Are you supporting others like Tiffany and I? Are you supporting the teaching of others here? Are you going to be doing workshops or hosting meetings? And there's always an other, and you're welcome to put the other into the chat. Now I see you can click on as many as are appropriate for you. And then Tiffany, if you want to end the poll and show it when we're so close. There's 2 folks that we're still waiting on, but we can probably close it now. All right, so who are you? So the overwhelming majority of you are teachers, not surprising. So we will talk about how to do this with our students in a way that makes that course a positive one for students. Hello to my 5 others that are supporting the teaching of others. Hopefully you'll get some ideas today. And then everything that we're talking about today will still be true for facilitating workshops like what we're doing today, or hosting any other kind of meetings where you want them to be in groups. So I think we have a nice variety of folks, and we will we'll find a way to connect with all of you. All right. So I have another question for you, and that is, I'm curious how many of you actually have used the breakout rooms as a host. So someone who's actually hosting. And the way we'll do this is to use our hand raising function. So under participants, you should hopefully be able to, I have a couple people who are raising their hands. You should have a hand raising function there. So if you've used it as a host, if you don't want to use that and you just want to tell us yes in the chat, that's fine too. But I want to get a sense of how many of you are familiar with this tool and have used it as a host. All right, not a lot of us. Okay, so we'll all experience this together. I think we will all find something useful for today. So we're going to model. We'll see how it goes today. One of the fun things about doing workshops on all these topics is we get to use the tools, and you get to experience what it's going to be like on the other side as a student. And I think that we often miss not knowing what it's going to be looking like from a student's perspective. So you'll get a chance to do that today. This particular agenda is really focused on how can we build that interaction. And we'll talk about this in 3 different parts. So the first, we'll talk about how to set up those breakout rooms and what are some of the meeting settings that you have to do. And I'll demo something. So I'll get out of this slideshow and I'll go into Zoom and demo and show you where some of the buttons are. And most of what we'll do today is I'll actually be showing you screenshots of the stuff behind the curtains that you can't see and I can't demonstrate to you because I'm actually in Zoom. So I'll show you some screenshots, and that's why we have the slides for you. Tiffany will post them a few more times here at the beginning, so you all make sure that you all have it so you can download it for later. So the screenshots will help you see what does it look like for the 22 minus 5, 17 folks or so that have never used it as a host. And then we'll talk about managing those groups. So what are some options that you can use in Zoom to actually engage with them? What are all the buttons? What are ways that students can ask for help, for example? And then the last part that we'll do is just think very briefly about, like, okay, you put them in groups, but now what? So just like if you were teaching face-to-face, how do you debrief that exercise? You have to do something. So we'll just kind of model that because in part 2, where we talk about managing groups, I'll actually have you in groups doing some pieces. And as I mentioned, we'll have questions along the way and then at the end, and then we'll talk a little tiny bit at the end about further resources, how you can continue to explore these tools and figure out how you can use them in your class or for your workshops and meetings. So I thought today, rather than just, I always ask people how they're feeling. I think if I think about this as kind of a meta moment for us who are hosting events or courses, it's really important to just kind of get your pulse on how the class is going, what your participants are feeling like. Today, rather than just asking you to give me a couple of words like I've done in the past, I thought it'd be fun to kind of see if any of these animals are connecting with you. Are you like the ostrich today and like, woohoo, I'm really excited just about life in general? Or are you kind of skeptical like our owl? Are you feeling kind of wow like our giraffe? Are you just kind of sleepy and over it? Or are you just kind of a little ticked off today about the world and where we're at? Are you just feeling glum and sad like our bulldog over there, or any other emotion? So in the chat, if you would, first, we'll see your name, but then can you first tell us what department you're in the chat, and then just let us know if there's an animal up here that you kind of identify with, or more than one. It's a complex situation we're in right now in the world, so maybe you have some complex emotions. So if there are any animals that you're feeling like today, feel free to add that in the chat. Or any other emotion words you would like to throw out there. We got a few bulldogs today.
I saw a couple cats.
Yes.
There we go. A few.
That little dog there at
Tired.
the bottom, that like kind of freaked out one. That's I am feeling, I admit, a little bit like that. Although I'm doing a workshop, so of course my energy is up. So I'm a little bit like an ostrich today too. Good. So we've got lots of folks at different places. I think it's important to acknowledge, particularly in this session, that if you're going to ask students to engage, you also have to engage with them, and you need to know kind of where they're at. So we just want you to think about, as we move along today, like how are you going to, maybe at the beginning of your sessions with students, whether you're going to be face-to-face with them, or if you're going to be doing some of these things online with your students, you know, how can we just connect with them in some way and find out how they're doing. And so why are we doing that? So one of the questions that I've been getting a lot lately is, what do we do about like autumn? What's happening in autumn, Stephanie? And the answer is we don't really know exactly how autumn's going to play out, but I'm guessing you will likely either be teaching fully online. Some of your classes are already online, or they're going to be fully online, and you want to do some synchronous components. Or since it's going to be more of a hybrid model, maybe you want to you put up some lecture slides or some recorded lectures on Carmen, and also maybe do some of those lectures in class, and maybe use the class to either answer some questions or do, you know, some kind of active learning pieces, which we have to be really careful of because we need to make space for our students, and they're all not there in the classroom. Most likely we will be missing some of our students. So we have to build in something online for our students to actually interact, right? We don't want just a course where students are never interacting. We won't be allowed to do that kind of course. So we have to find this way to have students learn from each other, which is important regardless of if it's online or if it's face-to-face, right? So we want to think about how can CarmenZoom allow us to build in some activities where students get practice building their skill sets, whether that's thinking skills or physical skills. Like what kind of spaces can we create where students are not just getting all input, right? That they're not just hearing from us or reading, right, material, but they're getting a chance to do more than just write an assignment or do an exam for you, but that they're actually engaging with the material. Engaging with each other is the way that we know many students and many of us as humans learn quite well. So if we're going to be doing this part in the online environment, we want to connect with students, and we want students to feel like they are seen and they are heard. So this is a perfect opportunity for us. Maybe even, I like to think of that doing things synchronously online like this may actually give more students an opportunity to be seen and heard than if you have them in the classroom even. So this is a nice kind of reason to get engaged with more of our students perhaps. This is also a way for you to get formative feedback. So it's important for me to find out, you know, what questions are you having as we're going along through the chat. It's helpful for me to have you raise your hands and do some polls because I get a sense of who you are and where you're struggling. And so thinking about using CarmenZoom in this way, you'll have a chance to find out, like, how did those groups go? Did they actually really understand that reading that they were supposed to do? And when I'm talking about student activities, there are so many that we can do, but I kind of clump them into 3 different categories right now. You know, the kinds of things we can use these breakout rooms for is maybe just have your students share opinions, right? Or share examples of things that they just read about or that you just lectured on. Do they have interpretations that maybe they can bounce off of each other to see how well that fits, right, with others and other interpretations? Or what questions do they have now that they all read this this article or they watched this film independently and now they're coming together? This could be a space to actually have them walk through some case studies and do some problem solving and even do some role playing where you're putting them in small groups and 2 of them are actually like trying out, right, two parts of the debate, or they're practicing their, whatever that kind of skill is. Maybe it's a social work class, right? And they're practicing a skill on case management with a pretend client. this is just maybe a space to discuss readings or the videos and lecture. Maybe it's not, maybe it's just clarification of what those things are. And you want your students to get some clarity from each other, or to really push the conversation to the next level, just like you would do in the classroom space when you have them face-to-face. Okay, so let's talk about setting up these breakout rooms. So those are the reasons why you do it. Let's talk about setting them up. So we're going to talk about the meeting settings first, and I'm going to get out of here and show you how you would do that in your actual Zoom space online. And I want to say here that it is going to be really helpful for you to do some of this part on an actual desktop or a laptop. The iPad version or any mobile version does not have all of the meeting settings that you will need to make this work for you. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. All right, so this is your typical CarmenZoom space, and you'll see on the left you have all of your Zoom settings for your Zoom space, right? And under settings, these are the things that will hold true for, it's going to make me log in again, sorry, all of the things that will hold true for your Zoom space. So if you click on, I'm going to go to In Meeting Advanced first, and under In Meeting Advanced, the second thing on here is a breakout room. And if you don't have this clicked, then you'll not be able to put your students in a breakout room. So this is like #1 rule, make sure that's clicked. And then make sure that you've got, allow the host to assign participants to breakout rooms when scheduling. If you don't have that clicked, then you can't actually assign students. The system will automatically assign them for you. So if you want some flexibility in who gets into what groups, you'll need to click that. And then under Meeting Basics, so back up, one of the things that it should be clicked already, but some of you may have disabled this, under the chat functions, because in a breakout room, the students can also chat with each other, right? And they can share files, just like what we were doing with the slides. And so you likely will want to be able to enable them to communicate with each other, both through the video in breakout rooms and through chat. So you want to make sure you do that. And then the last setting is actually in your meetings. So this is for, I'm going to do a fake class for social work 1, 2, 3, 4. My apologies if there's actually a 1, 2, 3, 4 social work class. I don't think there is. So when I go into this particular course, I have it set for this time right now. So if I go down and edit this particular class session, you'll see I have it starting today at 10, and I made it 3 hours long. As long as it's not a previous meeting, like it's already happened and it's an upcoming meeting, you will see down here under meeting options that you have the option to do breakout room pre-assign. And the reason I'm talking about this now is, one, I don't want to go back and forth, but we're going to start talking about how do you assign students into breakout rooms. And if you click this button, you will, if you're doing this for your class, so 94% of you are doing this for your class, you'll already have your, your list of students. And so you can actually create the spaces, right? I want to create X number of rooms. And if you don't have a lot of students and you have their emails easy, Smith.2, it's probably more like 2,700 at this point, right? But if you have, you can add their names into here, or you can do an import from a CSV file, which is probably more useful for you, which you can get from the Faculty Center. And that way you have that list and you can just upload them and then you move them around. And I'll show you a screenshot of what that looks like. So if you want to have groups that are, you can actually, there's a recreate button that I'll show you that you could keep using for that particular session. You can create a different group, each time you use the breakout rooms. If you want it to just be like as if they're sitting in the classroom and they could just sit wherever they want, then you can let Zoom Auto generate the groups for you. When you're in here, I do just want to mention that when you have, you can delete and you can add, right, rooms. And once I start adding participants in, you'll also see that you can start, there's a button that will show up over here that will have a little edit, a little pencil, and you can rename your groups. So the groups don't all have to say like groups 1 through whatever. Right, you can actually name them. So when you're in, so this is, we're going to start with my screenshots here, the behind the curtain stuff I can't show you. So this is, this happens to be my 3 children and our sitter who were playing around with me to help me get some screenshots. It's the beauty of working from home, I guess. You have an audience. So the 4 of them entered into my kind of fake classroom here. So you can see them up on the top, and this is my view when I'm looking at you guys too, when I'm not screen sharing. And there's a button down here called Breakout Rooms down on the bottom with the little 4 pieces. And when you click that, this is the piece that will show up. This pop-up window will allow you to choose automatically or manually. And if you choose to do it manually, it will take the number you saw on this previous slide. It will tell you like you have 4 participants, and we're going to assume you want them in 2 rooms, but you can change that, right? So if you have 30-something students, it will give you, a number of rooms, and you can adjust that. So it will help you get a sense of, I don't want 10 students in a room, right? I maybe want 3, right? So you just got to do that math quickly. So once you do that, then you'll be able to assign. And you'll click this little assign button here, and it will pop up all the students who have not been assigned already. So Abigail and Matthew had not been assigned already. I had assigned in Breakout Room 1, Rebecca and Samantha. And if I were live, I could be able to click down on this button here. It would show me who they are. There's also, not in this screenshot, but when you're actually in it, you will see right next to the breakout rooms, once you assign them, you can actually also rename the names of the groups. So if you want the groups to be called something besides Breakout Room 1, that's where you would do that. And you can add more rooms down here, like, oh, I'm realizing I said I want 2 groups, but now I want 3. You just click on the add a room button down below. So these are all 4 of my students assigned. And then whether you're doing automatically or manual, that's what it will look like. And then under options, you'll click on options to do a couple of things and some really important ones. One of the ones is that you want to, you want to tell them how long the breakout room is going to be. So this defaults to 30 minutes. 30 minutes may be a long time for group work. So maybe you want to do like 10 minutes. The one we'll do today is like going to be like 5, right? Maybe you have 15. And then you'll want to say to notify you when the time is up. I'll show you what that looks like. But you may be popping in and out of rooms. And so you'll want the system to just give you a notification. And that will also notify your students with a countdown. If you click on this button, there will be a countdown for your students to tell you when that breakout room session is going to be over. And you can even set how long you want the countdown to be. So it starts with 60, I think. So if you only want them 10 seconds and then you get them back, that's fine. You can also allow students to return to the main session at any point. That's the second one on here. So if you want them to be able to return when they're done, then you want to give them that permission. If you want to keep them and lock them in those spaces for a while, then don't click that button. Okay, so I wanted to just show you that there are some, it will tell you it's in progress and it will give you a countdown here and it will give you up on the top right. There's also an option to recreate these. So let's say you did a group, breakout room groups for the 10-minute discussion. You came back, you taught a little bit more and you wanted to put them back in another group. You can either, when you click on the recreate, you can either tell it to put them in the same space, or I had clicked on doing it manually because I wanted to like move the groups around. And I wanted to make sure you could see what it looks like from the student perspective. So this is one of my daughter's screenshots that she took from her iPad while she was in the whole group. So this is what it looks like from an iPad perspective. And it looks different than if you're using your laptop right now or your desktop. Things are in different places and they don't have as many options, but you can see that they do have everyone in a gallery here. And then when they're actually put in the breakout room, they have the name of their breakout room up here. And it will tell you in these teeny tiny little letters how much time is remaining. There's 27 minutes and 15 seconds remaining for this breakout room space. And Samantha and Rebecca were put into the same group so they could see each other. I had them keep their videos off, but otherwise they'd have their videos on. Okay, so we're just talking about setting up those breakout rooms. Do you have questions that we haven't answered?
No, nope. We only had one question and one person let me know they had to leave because they had another meeting. And then I did have a quick question. This is being recorded, but not shared. Is that correct?
It will be shared eventually. Yes.
It will be shared eventually.
Probably next week. We'll put
okay.
And we're doing this series probably 3 or 4 more times throughout the summer. So every week we'll probably be doing one of these parts of the 3 parts.
So shared via the YouTube page. Okay.
Yeah, which I'll show you at the end where that is.
Yep.
So one of the questions was, does this all have to be done in advance of the meeting? The breakout rooms, no. If you wanted to pre-assign them, then yes, you should probably go in for that class session and pre-assign them. But if you just want to do it automatically, you would do it actually in the space like what we're going to be doing. I didn't pre-assign you because I didn't know exactly which of you were going to show up. So I'm just going to do it on the spot here. Does a student in breakout room have access to, yes, I'll show that to you in just a second. I'll show you kind of what that experience is like actually for them in the space in this next little section. So I'll show you all the kinds of things they do have access to. So if you set up the breakout rooms at the being set up, do they go in automatically? No. So what it will do is when you have a choice, like when you push the breakout buttons and it will ask you if you want to actually use your pre-assigned piece. So not until you push the breakout room button will you actually be able to put them in their groups. It doesn't, like when they show up, they don't automatically go into their breakout rooms. And no, they cannot see multiple breakout rooms. They can see their breakout room. And you can pop in and out. They will not be able to pop in and out. All right, these are good questions.
Yeah, that relates to one of the other questions. They wanted to know if they could be in all the rooms at the same time. So in case anyone missed that, you only can be in one room at a time.
So I'll show you how you can pop in and out here. So this is all under my like managing groups. So once the groups are actually happening, what are all the kinds of things that you can do? So you can broadcast messages, and I'll show you how to do that. So it would go out to all the groups. You can pop in and out and join different groups, you as the host, as well as any other co-host that you have. So Tiffany is an alternate host and a co-host for this session, just like if you had a TA, for example, or a group of TAs, you can assign, if they're assigned as co-host, they can also join the different groups. And I'll show you how students can actually like call for you to say, like, help, we don't know what we're doing. All right, so this is back in my space, right? So I'm the host, and this is what I'm seeing for my 4 students. My one daughter decided to rename herself Cinderella in the middle of this. I'm sorry, but that's Abigail. So we've got my 4 students, and they're in their spaces, and we're actually 11 minutes or so into this session, as you can see from the progress of that 30-minute session. And maybe at this point, I want to broadcast something, and you'll see this demonstrated when I put you into groups yourself. You'll click this little broadcast a message to all. And I just happened to broadcast a message saying, we're going to be coming back to a large group in 2 minutes. Like I'm going to end those rooms early because I don't need them going on for another 19. Or it could be, remember, at this point, you should be at this place. Or remember, this is the question you're supposed to be focusing on, right? Or keep in mind, you can call me in if you need help, right? Anything you want to broadcast to all of them at the same time, that's where you would do it. And I wanted to show you from the student perspective where it comes from. So the left-hand side, this big one here is one of my daughter's iPads, and you can see at the very top, it's also very small. It will say from the host to everyone, that same message I typed in, right? We're going to come back to a large group in 2 minutes. The one on the right is a phone version, because some of your students may be using the phone, particularly if they're having internet access issues, and it's easier for them to use their teeny tiny little phone. So it does look different on there, and it's on, for this, it's on the bottom. And you can see that they don't really get the chance in a phone situation to to use the Zoom app where they see all of the people in the group at the same time, they have to flip through. And their chat menu, so I'll show you what that looks like here in a moment, but in the phone, a chat menu is also on another screen. It's not ideal. So you should just know though that some of your students may have to be using their phone, and they will just need to get used to it. You may need to help them understand where to find all of those things. But that's where they'll see that broadcasting message. It's a really useful tool. I'll try and make sure I broadcast something to you while you're in your group so you can see that. You will also see that when you're a student in the room, that you can invite the host for help. And that's this little ask for help button. And once you push that button, they'll get a notice that says kind of like a secondary step, right? So before something goes out to you, it will say that you can invite the host for a breakout room, and do you want to do that? And when they click invite host, if I happen to be in another room because I'm popping in and out, it will give them a message saying that they're currently not available, so keep trying, right? So I, as the host, won't see that another group has asked for me the whole time, right? These notifications don't stay up forever, right? So you'll want to make sure that your groups know to actually please try again, and keep pushing the button, in a minute or so that you as the host can see it. So when I am in the main screen, so I'm not in another group, I will actually see that Abigail asked for help from another room, and it tells me who asked for help and what room asked for help. And then I, as the host, would just join this breakout room. And when I join the breakout room, it kind of looks like this. This is from my perspective as the host. So as the host, I see. So this is I joined a different room. This is Samantha and Rebecca's room, and I'm in here now, all three of us together. But I wanted you to also see that if you have the chat open, so when you are a host, you kind of always have to make sure that that chat is open. So when the chat is open, it'll be on your right-hand side. When it's with them, so when they're with me, they actually have to, this is on the phone, they actually have to go to these little three dots on the bottom and click that, and this menu shows up, and they have to click the chat to open it. And then they have to close the chat to go back to the videos. So it's not ideal, and it doesn't show up all, it will tell them that there's a chat there, but they have to keep opening it each time, going through those three little dots. I wanted to also see, let me see if I can go back here. There is a join a breakout room that looks a little similar to this, but it will be down below, and it will ask when you click on it, you can say join a breakout room, and then you tell which breakout room to join. So here it is right here. I knew I was on the right screen. Okay, so up in the top, if I just want to pop in, there was the question of how do I pop in? When you're in the main screen, you will see all your breakout rooms listed, and then you click on the join for that group, and then you'll just pop into that room. So hopefully that answered that question. When you're in a space and you're chatting with them and you're sharing or answering questions, when you're done and you want to leave that room and go back to that main space, that last screen I was on, you'll just click the leave button at the bottom. There's actually a leave room button. And when you click on that, it's actually going to give you some options, and you'll just want to make sure you don't end the meeting for all. Instead, you're just leaving that breakout room, and it will send you back to that main space. I did also just want to briefly mention that you can share a screen when you're in there. So when I'm in there with my folks, I get to share my screen on the, and students can too, but only if they're using a laptop or a desktop. That share screen piece in a breakout room, you can't do a whiteboard through it. And on the phone, you can't share anything. On your iPad, you'll be able to share whatever apps are actually open on the iPad, but it's not ideal. So just keep that in mind of how much do they have to share with each other from their own desktop or laptop, because if you're doing it through the iPad or a phone, it's challenging. But you certainly can share when you're in there to answer a question. Maybe you want to pull up something. This is my very pathetic attempt at using the whiteboard and drawing. So maybe I wanted to explain a particular phenomenon, and I wanted to graph it out for them. And you can actually save the whiteboard spaces for the whole group, as we talked about in session 2, but you can also save them in the the breakout rooms. So if you click the save, and it will automatically put it in your Finder, right? And your, I'm on a Mac, so it goes to my Finder, but then you can just download them and put them into Carmen, for example, if you want your students to have access to them. And I just wanted to show you that they can actually see it. So this is on one of the iPads, and this is right before I started drawing. So they can see what I'm drawing, and this is the screen on the iPad. On the phone, it's like this big. It's very tiny. All right, so I'm gonna give you an opportunity to experience like what that actually feels like as a student. So you're going to get into breakout rooms, and I'm going to do that automatically, so I have no idea who you're gonna be talking with. And we're gonna do this very quickly. So I'll try and get you into groups of about 3 or so, and you'll have 5 minutes to just very briefly, like, hi, I'm Stephanie, and I'm from social work, or what, I'm from OD. And then I do have 2 questions for you, and I will show you where you're gonna get those questions. And they're in a shared Office 365 Word doc, and I'm gonna post it in the chat, but I'm also gonna broadcast it for you so that you can, I just need one of you to actually get in there. So decide on a note taker. And the 2 questions are this: what are the benefits of using breakout rooms for your students, and what are some of the challenges? There are no right answers. I just want you to experience what this is like. And you're gonna have someone who's kind of taking notes. So just so you could see the doc that I am, I'm gonna put it in the chat here before I do too much else.
And Stephanie, one question that came up that I was hoping that we could confirm maybe when they're in the breakout rooms is when they ask for help, if like one group or maybe even 2 groups ask for help, does that message go to all of the hosts or just to random hosts? Like, if
you know what, I guess we'll find out, because you're—
That's what I was gonna say. If multiple people could like ask us for help, and then we'll see if we'll both get that message. I thought that all of the hosts received it, but
I think they
I'd like
do.
to confirm it.
Yeah, I think they do. Okay, so you have, if you want to see if you can get to that link, that would be lovely. And let me just share what it is that I'm talking about here. Like a lot of buttons to push if you haven't figured that out yet. Okay, so I just want to show you that this is the doc, okay? And these are the 2 questions. So you'll see your group number at the top, and just bear like 5 minutes, right? Just see if you can get a couple of answers typed in over here, okay? All right, so I'm gonna get you into breakout rooms. We'll see how this works. There's 21 of you. I do not want to put you in 3 groups because those are very large groups. So I'm gonna put you into 7 groups. You can't see this, but I can. And so I will create them now. All right, so that was fun. So a couple lessons learned. If you don't really get them to look at the chat before you put them in breakout rooms, they will miss the link. But I think I got into every room at all 7 of you, I think, or maybe 6 of you, right? So when you're in there, you can chat with just that one particular group. So as a host, that's really nice, because then you have the whole list from the chat, not just like each room, right? So,
yes, and I just want to mention, for those who didn't hear the conversations that were happening between myself and a few others regarding that question on who does the ask for help go to, it just goes to the main host after all, not all of the hosts.
Oh, yeah.
So just correction there.
Yeah, we may not have, I don't know, we may not have had her as a an alternate. Oh yeah, we didn't have her as an alternate host. So you'll need to make sure that in your Zoom settings, you've made everyone an alternate, or like your TAs an alternate host. Also, I couldn't get her out of a room. She would have had to have left on her own accord. So I tried, but it only lets me move you all from one room to the next. So while it's going on, I can actually, there's a window that pops up that I can actually move you guys to different rooms, but it wouldn't let me take Tiffany out. Okay. So So I want to try to jump right into the debriefing part, and then we'll have some questions. So because this part is quick, I just wanted to make sure that I model a teeny tiny little bit about what I mean by debriefing and a way that you could do it. So I love using these collaborative documents because it allows me to capture everyone's work in one space, even though you're all in your own breakout rooms, which actually would be a really nice thing to do if you have that hybrid class where some are online and some, even if they're not synchronous, right, but they're online, and then you have your students in class and you want them all to be answering the same kinds of questions or doing the same kinds of activities. And if you want to be able to capture all of their answers, just have one document where they're all inputting there. So my debriefing would, if I had all the time in the world, I would, obviously first thank you all for working on this. And reminder, these are the 2 questions. And I would have the opportunity to kind of skim through and see, you can see this, right? I'm sharing the doc. You all have access to it, but I would share it as the teacher probably. And go down and see, oh yes, it looks like there's lots of similar benefits. There's it's good to do some discussions in. I see some of the challenges are like, what if they leave, right? What if they need help? Or what if their technology doesn't work? And then we would actually talk through all the answers, like, what do we do about all of those things? That may take 10 or 15 minutes to actually debrief the actual activity, just like it would in person. But at least this gives you the opportunity to have it all together, and you'd have to do some synthesis, right? Or maybe they ask their questions also in this document, and then you use that as a way to do some Q&A. So I personally am a fan of using those kinds of documents. And I'm using Office 365 because that is the university sponsored system. I always hear a lot of people say, well, can I just use a Google Doc? And technically I need to say, you really shouldn't use a Google Doc. And you probably should use something in the suite of university supported things. Plus then we know it's secure. But this is the same process, right? That you could do a box note, instead if you wanted to. All right, so let's see what questions you have about managing the groups that we haven't been able to answer yet. So this is what happens in the session itself.
So it looks like one question that came up that I haven't answered yet is, can a host switch hosting duties to a co-host and then get hosting duty back again? Yes.
Yeah, so one other way that I really like to do this, Tiffany has experienced this before in our team meetings. I like to give people actually blank PowerPoint slides, and then each group has their own slide, for example, and they can answer it there. And or they can create a slide or a document and then actually have the groups present. So that's another way to debrief. So maybe I say, someone from Lawrence's group, would you be able to go ahead and show us and share your screen with what you came up with in your small groups? What I would need to do is be able to make sure that I can make you a co-host, and that is in the meeting settings, the big meeting, the Zoom settings. You'll need to make sure that you have the option of making people a host, and so the other people can, remember I clicked on that button about being able to chat. There's also one in there about sharing screens. For some of you, you're in groups of 300 students and you do not want to share. You don't want students to be able to share screens. So you'll just need to think about, who are your students? Do you want them to have that ability all the time? Or do I just want to go and actually, as a host, I have the ability to click on your buttons. And so I can actually, I'm looking at Mark because he's the first one on the list. I can actually make Mark a host. And then Mark then Matt automatically, I don't want to change the host, make a co-host. And then he would actually have the opportunity to actually share. So then he'll have another option that shows up.
And then another question.
Mark, you can have them share the screen, but you have to make sure that that's in the setting. So if you have it, you can click it off if you don't want students to be able to share. So just make sure that in the Zoom settings that you have it so that students can share their screen. We have that option open for us.
Something else I wanted to mention, just in case anyone didn't see it here, but they were asking about how you were doing the collaborative documents. I just wanted to bring up, she was using the Office 365 where you can collaborate online. I don't know if any of you have used that, but here's to log into that. There's the link where you can collaborate with Word documents, Excel documents, all of the Office apps online.
So a couple things I wanted to mention about the debriefing thing. You saw that there's a countdown and you can set that, right? So when I clicked on it, I had it set already for 60 seconds so that you had a minute to wrap up. We talked a little bit about the sharing work in lots of different, you could do it in lots of different ways. You hopefully saw this in yours, that you got the little notice, but if you're not on if you are not on a phone, I wanted you to see that it's a big thing that pops up on the phone on the left to give you that countdown. And because I let you leave the rooms at any point, they can just leave the space. You were able to leave whenever you wanted to. And then just so you can see that little one on the right, that's the little, it's big there, but it's teeny tiny, just like you guys got. You got a blue one, I think, right? I get a little teeny tiny one up on my right. So what was the breakout room experience for you? I guess maybe, do you see down on the bottom, I think you have like some emotions. Anyone have like a thumbs up?
You can see that if you click on the more, there's an icon that says more with the 3 dots. There's a thumbs up, thumbs down, clap. Need a break. The last one, away.
And those reactions go away very quickly, which is kind of why I like the hand raising thing, because it stays until if I say, how many of you thought that was kind of interesting, you raise your hand, and then it stays until I get rid of those. So I'm glad you got the opportunity to see what that's like. Clear all for those of you who were doing your thumbs up. Thank you for those. Thank you for the thumbs up. All right, so I'm glad that was kind of an interesting experience. I just think it's really important to know what the students are experiencing on the other side. I want to take a couple minutes before we end to just talk through some considerations that maybe I haven't mentioned yet. So that ideal group size, just like you would do face-to-face, 2 to 5 is probably a good, doing things in partners is great. And you can set it so that you have, 2 in each. You could do up to 5. I think 5 is really like your limit. After that, you've got too many kind of social loafers. That just happens naturally as humans. It's just too many people to organize. You have probably all been in meetings like me where there's like 20 something people. It's hard, where it's 8 people in a room and you're trying to all work on something. So think about what that group size, what makes sense for you. You do not, when you're doing a synchronous Zoom session with your students, you don't have to have your students share their video. We would like to see your face. The hope I keep them anyway. I have to scroll wherever I have you guys on my right, but you can move it around. I can't see them all when I'm actually sharing my screen. So it's not as important to me to have us share our videos during the big session, but it's really helpful for when they're in the small groups to actually ask your students to share their videos during the breakout room so they could see each other. And that's kind of the best practice that's been out there. But also a good practice is maybe you want to suggest to students that we all use virtual backgrounds, because I want to be really sensitive to the fact that some students may be very uncomfortable about what their background is, right? Physically, their background. We've had, Tiffany knows, we've had some team meetings where, we've had some themes, based on certain, we're all going to do a Star Wars theme today. You don't have to do that, but we do like fake offices. We've done all kinds of things. And I think it's just something to consider. We don't want students to feel uncomfortable for a variety of reasons. And maybe they've got kids running around and siblings running around. So think about whether or not you want them to share their video. Preferably yes, in breakout rooms, and if so, do you want to encourage everyone to do a virtual background so we're all having the same experience? And also, we didn't talk about with any small groups, you need to make sure that you are clear about what your ground rules are. I didn't give you ground rules. It was a short activity, but if we're starting in autumn, you're going to have to make sure that you are articulating that in lots of different ways, what those ground rules are. And then in conclusion, a couple pieces kind of tie things together. So not just using the breakout rooms, but what are other ways that you can connect with students in the moment? And that's why I wanted to demonstrate, the hand raising, thumbs up, using chat, just finding a way to not just lecture and then stick them in a group, but how throughout the whole thing can you engage with your students? And you also want to think about how you're going to capture that work done. So I gave you the example of doing a collaborative group. If you allow them to save chats, they can save their own chats with the 3 little buttons on the bottom. You may want to save any work that they've done in the chat. And just think about using those activities and the debriefing to just, to think about it for us as a way to adjust our teaching. So I may put you in those groups, but now I realize, oh, I really needed to go over these, 3 concepts again. So not just to give them busy work, but to help them practice those skills, do those knowledge checks, but also for me as the instructor to know what I need to go back and reiterate or skip ahead because my students are doing pretty well at it. We had this question also about private chats, and Tiffany, I think we figured out the answer to that. The private chats are not saved. Is that what we discovered?
You can, but the host needs to adjust the settings so that that is allowed, I believe. But the way that you would do that, there's 3 dots at the bottom where you would normally chat, and it says save chat. That's what you would do when you're in your breakout room.
It just says like to Stephanie, like, and then like from Stephanie, but you can't actually see what we're writing.
Oh, right. Yeah. Like in the main, like if you're in the main chat and you're privately talking with someone, it'll show if you're the one downloading, but if someone else is downloading, it's not going to show any private chats that are happening between folks.
Yeah. We had that question like 2 months ago and we checked it out. So only if you're the one downloading, you're the one who had the private chats. So no one else can see that. Very briefly, as the sirens for tornado watches is going on, because it's Wednesday at noon. So remember, if you don't know, I will tell you, but if you do know, I will remind you that we are doing consultations in OD to help you think through your courses, whether they're online or using technology or doing this hybrid business, whatever that's going to look like. Please do not hesitate to contact us. The link is there, and maybe Tiffany, you can put those slides in one last time before.
Yeah, I was gonna say I did share that a couple times, and I also put the survey link if you could let us know how we're doing.
If you're having problems
as well
with Carmen itself, or Zoom itself, like the tool, that's the Carmen folks. So that's why you'd want to contact carmen@osu.edu, and then you get lovely people like Tiffany who are temporarily helping out and answering your questions. We have some tutorials at our resource center, and there's also, this video will be put up on our playlist as well as all the other workshops, and that's at the the 4th link. And then lastly, I will continue to put a plug for my former place, UITL, which is now the Drake Institute. The consultants there can also talk with you about just generally how do you want to maybe structure this course coming in the autumn. But if it's tech focused, please feel free to contact us.